first down. Penix drops back, well protected, throws, caught, touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Strange play fake, Bennett. Look out, here comes a posse of Ducks, and it's a touchdown. Even when it looked like Bennett was in trouble, he got loose and McConkey scores again.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Play fake, McCarthy. Survey in trouble, just fires it up, and it's caught on the sideline by Coral.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Schrader looks to throw, wide open man. Arondé Gaston hauls it in. Touchdown Syracuse. Orange is the new fast again.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Big Shipley's going to break free. Across the 10, he's into the end zone for touchdown. 32 yards.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
So what could happen today in sports after the week we've had with the PGA Tour and LIV and obviously the constant just churning of whatever might be college athletics, the landscape, realignment, and so much more. Today there was an athletics summit in Washington, D.C. The University of Arizona actually was the one hosting this, and we're going to have a lot of different tweets. We'll get those up in a minute from the Ross Dellinger feed, plus a couple of other notes. Brian Murphy, who's out on the East Coast, we've had him on before, will come on a little bit after 5 to kind of summarize the day, as Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, met with many, including there were SEC and other coaches, and there were presidents and ADs, et cetera, along the line. Also news today involving Notre Dame's future with an athletic director change there. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. So if you wake up, how many times do you think we wake up and there's something that we didn't even know existed the day before? Not just because of time, but because of the way sports bounces around so much these days.
Oh, it's almost every day. I mean, that something happens. That's why sports gets the best TV ratings, because it's new every day. It's not the same all the time. So, yeah, it's constantly changing. And that Notre Dame news, which we'll get to, was really huge in a couple different regards. Mm-hmm. And we'll also show you the power of media and how that was a really kind of big boy move that they made today. And then what's going on in D.C. today kind of, to me, illustrates that I think there are people, and I think there are people in place that know the direction that college athletics needs to go. Then there are people like you saw Hunter Yurachek yesterday that knows that it's leaving that place and don't want to let it go. And I do think that that's where the rub is going to happen down the line, because, well, that's kind of the constant battle, but we're maybe getting inching closer to the place that, okay, this needs to be treated differently because it's not the same as it was. This is not horse and buggy anymore. This is not the Model T. These are, high-end cars now rolling down the road.
And then also the Big 12 today with news that we've heard about the international flavor. Craig, the Big 12 will be working on a bowl game, a postseason game in Mexico starting in 2026. And then also the fact that Houston and Kansas will have men's and women's basketball there in 2024. There will be soccer, baseball, and much more as your mark reaches outside of the parameters of the area, but also outside of the country.
We knew he was, doing his best to try and find new avenues of making money, new avenues of just promoting the brand, new avenues of spreading the word about, the teams in this league and, their stars and their coaches and, just the institutions themselves. I mean, he's made that very clear, whether it's, talking about camps with basketball personalities up at Rutgers Park in New York, or whether it's been something like playing a football or basketball game internationally. There's been a lot of things thrown out there as ideas, and good to see that kind of take another step forward, so that we now have some more details, and it's not just something that was floated out into the ether and then it was just said and then not really followed up on. No, they're following up on what they initially mentioned about having some exhibition games in Mexico for better or worse. I don't know. As far as what kind of impact it can have, I certainly don't think it can hurt. I certainly think that if it's going forward, then the schools all signed off on it, obviously, so they see some benefit to it, which I'm sure was part of the discussion, and we know it was part of the discussion last week at spring meetings. So glad to see some finalization there, even though there's still some more details to be worked out. It was really interesting though when Pete Thamel put his first tweet out, because he just mentioned Houston and Kansas playing, and it made it sound like it was a football game or something, and it was like, whoa, wait a second, a football game. And then he deleted it and he clarified, no, it's basketball. Like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense, because Houston, Kansas, and football, I would have needed to hear a lot more about who gave up a home game willingly to do that, and
hey, Mexico, we're going to roll out a big football game for you. Here's Houston and Kansas,
right?
The teams that you all know and love down here in Monterrey, Mexico.
Yeah, so it's good to see some more follow up on that, and start to kind of see what the future is going to look like with all their different initiatives. And so now we know, some baseball and some women's basketball and some whatever else has been mentioned at this point. I know it's going to be a variety of sports. So yeah, it's cool. I'm not sold on this is going to be a great thing every year and that it's going to set the world on fire, but I do think it's something different, and they're a conference that needs to do something a little bit different. And if they can be the one that's on the cutting edge of sort of leading that way in that regard, then it's an avenue for them to potentially fully and firmly establish themselves moving forward as the number 3. Or if you're a believer of the whole breakaway and this is going to be a split type of association moving forward, the number 3 would technically be number 1 in the different division or whatever you think that it is that's going to be broken off, inevitably. So, yeah, I think it's good positioning for the future and just smart to kind of, spread your wings a little bit.
I think the basketball game's a great idea. I'm on the fence on the football game, because the international games are hit or miss. It's there, especially the bowl season is strange, but and that's true. That's not only true in the Bahamas Bowl. That's true in whatever bowl in whatever city, depending on who winds up falling into it, whether it's going to be well attended or not. But I do think that this is not about because in the Bahamas Bowl, the problem that they have is, okay, yeah, sure, it's going to be great for the teams to go to the Bahamas, but it's right before Christmas. How many people can change their holiday plans to just pop on down to the Bahamas to watch their team play? This is not going to be, and then the Bahamas are not densely populated. I mean, especially not densely populated with people who have money to have tickets to go to the college football game that they may not even care about. Mexico's different, though. So if you're going to host a bowl game at Monterrey, this is about curating Mexican football fans. This is about getting those fans in that country, not necessarily about the fans from the bowl game, the teams from the bowl game that'll go to it.
Okay, but it's also about who might sponsor this, and possibility of either money from United States companies that will want to be a part of it to reach the Mexican audience, and or businesses in Mexico, Monterrey, etc., that also want to be a part of it too. Now, there was a lot of discussion, I guess, in the last 24 to 36 hours about Colorado was going to have a board meeting. It was going to be kind of a short and sweet. And anytime any of the schools in the Pac-12 have any kind of meeting planned, whether it's public or what, and I get mixed up on which ones are private or behind the closed doors, whatever. The meeting this morning, in fact, there was a thread on Sikkim365.com. It was like a timeline to the meeting. Well, it was canceled. Brian Etheridge has a pretty interesting note in the premium section about why there are 2 or 3 people, Brian, Sam Bradshaw, among others, but there's a couple of other members of that site that are very tied in, and it could be as simple as they were going to meet, discuss perhaps even any kind of media rights, or maybe even what are they discussing with the Big 12 or what. And it sounds like it could have been something as simple as somebody else involved in the meeting wanted something else to be a part of the discussion or wanted something different, and then, okay, we delay it. No different than a lawsuit. You go into the court, everyone's ready to go, and then you have some sort of delays as they need to look at whatever evidence or need to have a meeting with the judge. So that might have been the case from someone pretty much ingrained in that kind of business from earlier today on SicEm365.com. But also, Arizona. President Robbins was in Arizona hosting the D.C., what is an athletics summit about the future. NCAA President Charlie Baker was there. I saw a picture earlier. Nick Saban, SEC, of course, has been on the campus in D.C. Here are some tweets. Let's go over these. And when you want to stop and talk about any of them, just let me know what you want to do. Here's Dellinger. Here in D.C., the Future of College Athletics Summit. Charlie Baker kicks it off. It's hard to find anybody who thinks the current system is working. All right, that's not breaking news. Everyone knows, even those who are getting more or those who want more understand that. Here's a couple of other notes from Charlie Baker. NCAA needs any bill to be preemption. Congress has the ability to do state preemption. The NCAA might be able to do that, but it is way more complicated, and that is a big part of the reason why Congress has more legitimate authority to create a level playing field.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the hardest part of any NIL legislation is to, in our current political landscape, is to override state bills and to get the majority of people in the House. The Senate might be more likely to do that, but to get the House to vote for this, to me, would be tough, given that a lot of the things that are going on now are the states need to determine their own things. There are a lot of different issues that are hot button issues that have gone that way, where if you want this issue in your state, it's up to your state. If you don't, you don't have it, but it's up to your state and not the national government. And that's the way it should be for a lot of things. But when you've got things that are interstate commerce things, like the NCAA playing games, Nebraska and Florida are playing the same game in the same league with the same rules, but they're not, right? Because of the NIL thing, then that's where it steps in. Sports gambling is another thing like that. They have not done this yet with marijuana. I mean, that's kind of, I'll compare it to that. If you want to have legalized marijuana, vote on it and have it, but the federal government hasn't taken it off Schedule 1. They haven't done anything with it yet to make it to where they can even make money on the states that are doing it. So that's where, to me, it's going to be hard to convince a Congress that right now is leaning towards letting the states do whatever they want and then clean up the mess later. That's where I think it's going to be tough.
Number 3, this is from Ross Dellinger. Charlie Baker, here are 3 things he wants a congressional bill to include: a registry of all NIL deals, certification processes for agents. By the way, pro sports have that, and a uniform NIL standard. Also, and by the way, Baker's met with 77 of what are the 97 NCAA conferences around in all sports. He's met with 77 of the 97.
Yeah, the agent part of that, I mean, I think that's fair. I'm sure there will be some pushback on that from those who we get certified. Like, I like this setup way better when we can just basically run free and nobody even knows that we exist. But I think that there's some shadiness that's going on, and that's not why this is being held up in any way. But I do think there's probably a flashlight that needs to be shined in a couple of corners. If we're going to sit there and try to treat this like it's all on the up and up, and we want to make it uniform and have everybody on an even playing field and things like that, yeah, I think the least that you could do is make sure that the people actually working with these young men and women are certified to do their jobs, and they're not going to be, the next story of 10 years down the line, we're hearing about the great Kentucky quarterback who lost $15 million because some scummy dude from Nashville or, New Orleans or something, got in his ear through his high school coach, like that. And there's the makings for all of that. And luckily we haven't heard about anything like that. And I know the $15 million, that's not a realistic thing with any player right now. But, 15,000, that's significant to a lot of people. So, yeah, certifying the agents, I think, would be the least that you could do that everybody could be on board with, more so than just the standard NIL rules, because I know that there's going to be some resistance to that for those who have a a leg up right now. But if you really do care about the best interest, the least we could do is make sure they're working with the proper people who are properly certified.
And then again, you could just be some 35-year-old with an education or not working somewhere and blow $15,000.
Sure, yeah.
But you want to make sure you protect the student athletes that get whatever they're getting, no matter what it is, to make sure that there's education on how to handle it. But even then, you got entourage and you have followers and you have people always, hey, you have $10,000 now. You know,
I'll give you guys an example of a legendary player here in the state of Texas who this happened to when he was in high school. It was just a guy who got his meat hooks into him when he was in high school, and then by the time he was a pro, bled him dry, and that's Vince Young.
Yeah.
So Vince Young had somebody that was a family friend that wasn't. I don't even know if he was an attorney. I think he was an attorney, or eventually was an attorney. And when he got to the NFL, the NFL said, here's a list of agents that we like. And he said, well, this guy's my family friend. He's going to take care of me. And the Titans were like, I don't know if you want to do that. And then he did it, and then eventually he lost a bunch of money. And he, some of that was on his own. Like, he was the stories about him going to like a Chili's and, people patting him on the back and him buying rounds for the whole house at the Chili's. That's on Vince Young. But he was taken for a ride by a guy who got his hooked into him in high school, and that guy was patient.
Yeah.
He waited for the payday, as where now he didn't have to be patient. He can get your hooks into 16 and take the money down.
You hear those stories about boxers or other athletes, no matter how many times they've been a part of it. Here's Baker on the timeline for a congressional bill suggesting that we've written about quite a bit. This is from what Dellinger was talking about. It needs to happen before the end of the year when the presidential election cycle gets going. Seems optimistic in something happening. Of course, nothing has ever gone through it and or really gotten to the point of a true vote.
Yeah, again, like I said, just going back to my initial point, I think that you could probably get something going in the Senate a little faster, which is where most of the stuff seems to lie right now. So if the Senate acts on it first, you might be okay if they could tell the House this is what you need to vote on. But if it's going to come out of the House, it's going to be an even bigger mess. And I'm only giving the Senate slightly more credit than the House for efficiency ratings. It's not, they would get bad Yelp ratings if it was a restaurant.
All right, we'll continue. Baker describing the state laws prohibiting enforcement. We kind of touched on this, where people just basically say, screw the NCAA, screw the conference, screw their rules. And a lot of that's on their own fault, because they waited too long to try to at least understand that their belt was being loosened with all the different rules, the old Bannon lawsuit, et cetera. And so, yeah, I probably have said that a few times. Screw the NCAA. They had their opportunity. They had everything they wanted, and they wanted more. They didn't want to give up anything. They waited, and then eventually legally they basically had everything slip through their hands.
Well, when you're kind of the bully and you beat up on people and it's never even, you don't even know the reason why sometimes, like it's not always clear as to why they beat up on some people worse than they beat up on others, even if the crimes, so to speak, are similar. I think that agitated, confused, and really pissed off a lot of people. And, they were the bully for a long time, and there were really no repercussions to do anything about that. And then eventually, schools like Miami pushed back, and, slowly but surely that foundation started to crack a little bit. And you saw that, hey, maybe that thing's not as solid as we thought that it was. And you know what? Maybe that thing's not even as legal as we think that it is. And so it's been a very interesting and very quick sort of spiral for the NCAA in terms of its power. Now, it's not without it entirely, of course, but there is a path moving forward where you can definitely see that them being in the position that they were so accustomed to is not the case right now, and it certainly won't be the case moving forward. Now, what is in place of that? I mean, that's where everybody starts, the speculation, much like with topics like realignment or whatever else, and that's where you typically land on the idea of breaking away and having your own branch of, enforcement and rulemaking and all of that. So don't know how close or realistic that is at the moment, but there's definitely the signs in the air that's something that's possible.
President Robbins, who we discussed quite a bit yesterday, suggesting the NCAA is too big and 3 divisions need to be split out, separated by more than they are already. And Charlie Baker, who was in the room, of course, along with many others, clapped at the idea that, first of all, the NCAA is like that big, huge whatever that's just won't, they can't budge. They're just so massive, and they're trying to break it up into different, not entities, but different. Is that part of maybe taking Division I from FBS, FCS, and even breaking FBS into something else? Is that what he's suggesting?
No, I think it's Division I, Division II, Division III, and maybe FBS and FCS get a little more separation in that. But I'll just ask you guys, what is the same about Washington State and UMHB?
Not really a
They're
whole lot.
underneath the NCAA umbrella.
I mean, like, it's
Not in big population centers.
No.
You know, they're kind of in small towns. I mean, that'd be about as similar as they get.
So when it comes to their athletic departments, and I picked a smaller Power 5 school in Wazoo, but there's nothing the same about them. They don't, like, when UMHB's baseball team needs to go somewhere that's, 12 hours away, they get in vans and drive there. When Washington State's baseball team needs to go somewhere 2.5 hours away, they get in a plane and fly there.
Well, they may bus 2.5 hours away.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
they have that opportunity.
Yeah, so
the budgets are different. The revenue is different. The rules are all the same, though, right? They're all under the same umbrella, so to speak. Now, there was one other note that I saw from a couple of other tweets, and this from Dennis Dodd on Amy Perko, who's the Knight Commission, for realignment, calling for realignment of college sports, independent directors on the NCAA board, singular governance entity for college football. The NCAA receives nothing from the college football playoff, a financial framework, oversight of how NCAA money is distributed.
Yeah, these are all great ideas. You have to start, especially the separating college football off. This is something that I don't even know who brought this up to me when I first started working and covering college athletics, because I was young, I was in my 20s, and didn't realize, how different it was. But, college football, I think it was in regard to Title IX, is college football makes it hard for Title IX to create opportunities, because it's not like they're not trying to, but you can't. It's 85 scholarships. What sport does anyone else play that has that many players on a roster? There's not one. I mean, men's or women's. There's not. Like, if you had a women's rugby team, they still only have like 28 people. So
I don't even know how much.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got all these different things you have to do, and college football makes more money, generates more interest, has its own team, all these different things. It definitely needs to be separate.
All right. And then also this one, Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner on the NIL, we need some help. We really do, says that there are, that's why they're in D.C., even if the percentage chances are small that something gets done, saying that colleges need for NIL, again, agent registration, standardized contracts, and a registry education process. So reiterating what Charlie Baker, just in different ways, different words, but the same 3 or 4 bullet points of what they need. That's from the commissioner, Jim Phillips, of the Atlantic Coast Conference. Now, I had a conversation today, right before we started the show, with John Wilner of the San Jose Mercury News. He also has the Wilner Hotline. We've had John on this show before, and I think he's a hell of a journalist. And I asked him 2 things. One thing we brought up, was it you that brought up what the interest in football, was it us or whatever, that Cal's legitimate interest in Cal football might be?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of brought that up a little bit yesterday. I think that's been brought up by many people over the last couple of years, just when you're scoping out. I think that got to be brought up quite a bit during the Big Ten, UCLA poll, because if you'll remember, and it's not hard to remember, it wasn't that long ago, but as soon as that happened, that opened the floodgates to just all hell breaking loose and all calamity ensuing, to where then you not only had the Big 12, who was still kind of out on the hunt, but really the main story became not even the LA schools moving, but what that could lead to as far as who else would be picked off. And so then we had the entire summer and fall of Oregon and Washington and, UCLA and, Cal and Stanford and that whole conversation. So, yeah, that got brought up quite a bit when Cal would be mentioned, and even Stanford as well, of, if the new college football world order is going to be player salaries and, things of that nature, how invested or interested would schools like that in particular be? I think that's kind of boils it down to what we were talking about.
So instead of me guessing, even though Aaron Rodgers, Joe Cap to Aaron Rodgers, and who knows in between, Cal's had some dudes They've had some pretty good football teams. Marshawn Lynch. They've had,
Tony
you look
Gonzalez.
at their history, they've got some dudes now that have gone on to play who are also like All-American type players in college, but also an incredibly, I don't know how many Hall of Famers, but a handful, I'm sure, in the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame. I asked him, I said, John, what would you say on a scale of whatever you want to use is the interest, full throttle, what would you say the interest is with Cal? And he was very honest with me. He said, David, I would say, first of all, it's not full throttle. He said it's not USC, Oregon, Utah passion, but it's there. I said, okay, tell me not about Berkeley, not about the city of Berkeley, but on campus, the donors, the alums, whoever. He said, I'd say probably just a little bit above medium. And, and of course, a lot of other things that are on that campus. It's a school that obviously education and all the academics incredible, but he said that. He goes, it's probably, I don't know if he really meant, but I'd say like a 6.5 maybe on a scale of 10. And I said, okay, now, yesterday, the grant of rights discussion about the 10 presidents in the Pac-12 10 agreeing to a grant of rights. I said, I still can't grab onto this. Why would they do that without the details? And John said to me, well, there you go. I think people are not understanding that they really do maybe have, he thinks they have parameters. He thinks that they have some bids. And I said, well, why haven't they announced it yet? Because it hadn't all been tied up. But he thinks that the reason, this is John Wilner, he thinks the reason they did agree to the grant of rights, verbally or whatever, but they still need to see the deal, is because they have seen, at least in front of them, the parameters of whatever it might be, and perhaps it's enough for them to say, okay, once we get the final details, we still need to see it on paper, we're ready to go with the grant of rights. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be $18 million or $35 million, but that was from John, and his side of what the grant of rights story was more about that came out yesterday.
I also think, just in my opinion, it is that you've got some schools that are, debating if they're fine for this, but they really don't know what the future is beyond that, and if it's just now is the time to move if you're going to wind up having to do this again.
Yeah, I'm one that took yesterday as positive for the Pac, and I said it a few times on the show. I felt like that's kind of what you're referring to, is kind of what I was saying in so many ways. Not exactly, but I took it as, despite all of the the noise surrounding that, of, well, if for better or worse, clearly Oregon and Washington aren't sitting there saying, hey, we're going to the Big Ten. They agreed to a grant of rights, right? So that's a big question that's answered. So if there's no threat of them leaving, then what's the only other threat? The only other existential threat is the money part of it. Well, if you've seen some of that and you feel like it's good to go, or even if you haven't, you've agreed that, hey, Oregon and Washington aren't going anywhere, and they not only aren't going anywhere, but now as a league we've all come together and we have a loose set of guidelines that we're all willing to sign up for, and grant of rights that we're willing to sign up for, including, a little bit of tweaks to revenue, all of the ACC. So that's why I took it as a positive, and also went on to mention that I didn't really buy in anymore into the whole idea of if the Big Ten comes calling, I feel like if that was going to happen in the near future, that was going to happen sometime like now, because it has to, because they have to sign a grant of rights. So, that's why I think that the grant of rights length is going to be the most interesting part of that, because that will kind of set the scene for what an out would look like and how that lines up with others' contracts who have just been signed, like the Big 12s, like the SECs, like the Big 10s. Are they all kind of on the same plane after, the Pac gets done with theirs, so that, if there's a second wave coming or whatever, everybody's kind of on the same starting line. That's what I'm interested to see, is the length. But, yeah, I took that as a positive, because the story would have been if they hadn't been able to have agreed to a grant of rights. And, yeah, I think that you've probably seen some financials loosely, if anything, to get you to agree to that. But, yeah, until ink's put on paper, nothing's official or finalized. But, yeah, the Oregon-Washington existential threat, I felt like that was a sign yesterday that that's not really a thing to worry about.
Yeah. We're going to get more into that as well a little bit later on in the show. Chuck Cooperstein, who can hit on all these topics, including college football, the landscape. He's a Florida grad, and maybe even more a little bit from last week's SEC scheduling, the NCAA, and a lot more. This is what?
I got the Big Ten schedules come out today, too. Yeah.
I'm printing it out for everybody. So.
Yeah, we will also have that and more. This is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans. Father's Day is just around the corner. Here are some ideas if you would like to go by there, if you live in the Waco, Central Texas market, or contact them. They can help you as well. The Zycar Travel Humidors, back in stock. They have humidor, they're like skeleton, a pelican case type material. Humidors for 3 different sizes of cigars, or number or count, 5, 10, and even 15. I have one that's good for probably the one that's 10, and I have also one that's larger that can be for 15. And they got a cushion in between. You could put the bag if you want to keep them nice and moist during the time you're traveling. New lighters are here. Fresh new designs and finishes to catch the eye. Desktop humidors are on sale at Don Humidor for Father's Day. They have limited edition Punch Dad Bod cigars, a great flow, draw, and medium flavor for any smoker, and also CBD hemp-derived THC products for whatever ails you. Great for sleep if you like to do the gummies. I've told you about them. Vita Dreams, great for aches and pains, anxiety, depression, more, or just good old-fashioned fun. Tell Carol, Ashley, and Cheyenne Smokey sent you. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center right off of Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
It's Ram season at Allen Samuels in Waco, and the deals couldn't be any hotter. Shop the greatest selection of new inventory in Central Texas and save big on Ram trucks. Now offering 10% off MSRP on a new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, or get 2.9% for 72 months. The choice is yours. Plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders. Allen Samuels in Waco is the place to shop Ram trucks. Visit today or browse online at allensamuelsdcj.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, Army. Warm welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Voice of the Mavericks, but just an incredible veteran broadcaster. Chuck Cooperstein joins us on 365 Sports with Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Chuck, I saw a tweet, I guess it might have been Tuesday when all hell broke loose in golf, that you said this is when you wish you were hosting a sports talk show because of all the things that were going on. And obviously you were really, really good at that as well. Let's start, though, if you don't mind, with college football and where we are. The Pac-12 awaits their deal. They say they have a grant of rights, or they have reported that, and yet there's no details. What do you think in the end is going to happen with the Pac-12?
I think they're in trouble. I think that the four-quarter schools could very well be picked off by the Big 12. And again, I have no inside knowledge of this, but I think certainly Colorado and Arizona are very much in play. And it's hard to imagine that Arizona State would be willing to stay behind if Arizona goes. And Utah, is a really good program. And then Oregon and Washington can go to the Big Ten, and they don't have to gnash their teeth over going. And I think the Pac-12 is done. I mean, I just don't see how they extricate themselves from where they are right now. And I just don't see how a primarily streaming deal works today. Maybe it works 10 years from now, but it doesn't work today. And if that's the road that they are ready to travel, I think they're ready to run into an oncoming semi at about 70 miles an hour.
Chuck, do you think it would be best for them to make that decision now, or wait out 5 years when they have to, or 6 years when they have to negotiate this again?
For who to wait out?
For like Colorado and Arizona, if they're even thinking about it now, would seeing how the Pac-12 goes be beneficial to them at all if they have to do this again when everybody else does their media deals in 6 years?
I mean, if I'm Colorado, I'm going. I'm leaving. Because Colorado made a mistake leaving in the first place. When Colorado was really good, when Bill McCartney had it going in the 80s and early 90s, he recruited Texas like nobody's business. And he can't, and nobody since then, Gary Barnett or Neuheisel or Mike McIntyre, anybody who's coached there, nobody has been able to get into Texas to recruit successfully. Now, Deion Sanders, I think, can recruit successfully regardless of where he is. But I think certainly with his experience with the Cowboys, I mean, the name recognition is just totally off the charts. And it would just make his life so much easier. Not to mention, all the ties that he has in Florida, where he brought Kamari McLean with him to play at Colorado this year. It makes too much sense for Colorado to go back, and all it would do really is rectify a big mistake that they made in the first place.
Chuck, you've been heavily involved, obviously, on the sports media side for a very long time now. You've seen a lot of changes and innovations and things of that nature. What are your thoughts when you hear about the streaming component of live sports? I know the NBA's got their upcoming deal that's going to be just absolutely massive. But where do you see streaming, live games in particular, playing in sports moving forward in the entertainment industry?
I mean, it sure looks like it's headed there. But I guess if you are of a certain age younger than I am, and you, David, for sure, you can probably accept this more readily. To me, until the streamers can figure out how we can easily change channels from game to game the way we do now with linear television, I think it's a major problem. I mean, because you then have to, for instance, say, the Big 12 has their streaming right now, Big 12 Now and what have you. There's a Baylor game that's on there that maybe you're going to watch, but there's a better Big 12 game that's on ESPN or ABC. At some point you might want to go check it out. But you know what? It takes you about 25 to 30 seconds to ultimately get there in the best of worlds, as long as things aren't buffering, as opposed to instantaneously getting that done and being able to click back and forth. And until the streamers can figure that out, I just don't see how sports fans are served very well by it. And especially, and obviously the NBA, you can do it on a night-to-night basis, but in football, whether it's the NFL, or it's with YouTube now, or college football, regardless of where they wind up, you only have one day to do this, pretty much. And if you can't easily go back and forth the way you used to be able to do with a Sunday ticket, or for the games that are over the air on Fox and ESPN and CBS and what have you, and I just don't think people are going to be very happy with that.
Chuck, I also think that one thing that streamers are forgetting about is when you are watching a streaming game and the game you're watching is over, it just goes to a blank screen, right? Well, if I'm watching on regular linear television and it's over and there's another exciting game on that I can watch almost the last quarter of that they just take me to live, then maybe I don't leave. Like, I'm sitting there watching for even longer because a good game has popped on that I wasn't even planning to watch.
That's a legitimate point. I mean, I just think there's a lot there. And I mean, I think everybody is looking to the future. It's kind of like electric cars. Everybody is trying to get ready for electric cars, and yet nobody is really ready for electric cars. Nobody is ready to do that now. It's like, you tell me that I will have absolutely no problem anywhere I go with my electric car, that I can charge up, and that I can charge it up in the time that it takes to put to gas up a tank in the car that I presently have. Then maybe we're going somewhere. But until we get there, I'm not going to go there. And I think there are a lot of people who probably fall into that camp.
Chuck, what do you think about the SEC scheduling decision, 8 games over 9? It's been kind of a polarizing topic, intense in some circles, but do you have any strong feelings one way or the other about 8 versus 9?
Incredibly cowardly on the part of the SEC. I mean, it's supposed to mean more, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if it means more, then it means more when you're playing. If LSU is playing Texas, or LSU is playing Mississippi State in an extra game, as opposed to LSU playing McNeese. All right, I mean, it's just that clear. Football coaches are absolutely terrified that finishing 6-6 is going to get them fired, and in many cases that might be the place. But you know what? In the SEC, this is what you signed up for. If you didn't want to be a part of that, then go someplace else and play go play in a G5 league, if you will, and go win 9 to 10 games and be happy with that. But if you're going to play with the big boys, then you know what? Play with the big boys. Don't screw around with that. Listen, I'm an SEC guy. I'm an SEC graduate, and I could not be more disappointed in the leadership of Greg Sankey, who I think is, generally speaking, is a very smart guy and who clearly wants 9 games, that he didn't put his foot down and say, fellas, this is what we're doing. Because he's done that in other instances with other issues around the SEC, but that he did not do that here is just a startling lack of leadership on his part. And, for guys like Nick Saban, who was always in favor of 9, now he's upset because, my goodness, Tennessee's good again. LSU's good again. And Auburn is Auburn. So like that, his 3 designated games that he'd have to play out of his 9 might be tougher than somebody else's designated 3. All of a sudden he's scared. What is that? I mean, it's disgraceful. It's just disgraceful. And compare that then to college basketball coaches, and especially basketball coaches in the Big 12. Clearly the best basketball league in the country, and all they're talking about, Gonzaga, come on down. Mm-hmm. UConn, come on down. The more the merrier. It's better for everybody. The better the competition, the better the league, the better we all are for it. And here you have the SEC just with their tail between their legs, saying, "Oh, okay, we'd rather play Samford." As a game that means absolutely nothing, to guarantee ourselves a trip to a money-losing bowl game as opposed to taking on, whether it be in conference play, another SEC game that you might make $1 million off of, simply because it winds up being in your barn. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't get it. I just don't see the logic, any of the logic that the SEC is using here, and especially now that the playoff is being expanded, and they're probably going to get 4 or 5 teams in the playoff anyway.
Is this the first time in a long time you can remember that they've actually taken kind of a black eye? Because they've pretty much been smooth running. ESPN, the SEC network, they've rolled. I mean, they've got a bunch of championships, but is this the first time in a while that maybe somebody checked their ego at the door?
It's the first time that they've gotten bashed across the face with the 2x4. Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, they've made a lot of pretty much every correct step since Roy Kramer in 1990 brought Arkansas and South Carolina into the league, and they went to 2 divisions, and they started the SEC championship game. They've not made very many mistakes, if any, over the last 30 years. But this is, to me, this is a big one. And you know what? At some point, I think in 25, when the deal really kicks in and whatever, I think they'll adjust it. I think eventually they will get to 9. But until then, whatever brickbats they take, they've earned.
Yeah, and by the way, Chuck, the Big Ten about an hour ago made them look really bad because they came out with this it's complicated, but it's a pretty innovative scheduling model where there's permanent opponents and all that. But just comparatively, here's Michigan's 2024 schedule. They're going to play Illinois, Ohio State, Rutgers, USC, Maryland, Michigan State, Minnesota, UCLA, and Wisconsin. And is Jim Harbaugh out there complaining about it? No, he's not.
No, I mean, and here's the thing. It sounds like, on some level, it sounds like the SEC was asking ESPN to pony up again, but for the extra game. But hey, I mean, you've already, you've got Oklahoma and Texas in the league already. I mean, that's what that was paid for. And so live with it. You're still you may not be making Big Ten money, but you're certainly making more than enough money that you're still the best football conference, and you can do everything that you need to do in order to remain the best football conference in America.
Tim, just wanted to get your thoughts before we let you. Chuck. Excuse me. Want to get your thoughts before we let you go on the NBA Finals. Denver pulling back out in front. What have you thought about what you've seen so far?
Jokic is the best player in basketball right now. This is a very. Look, we all look back fondly on what Dirk did in 2011, and had his moment, and for those 8 weeks, he was the best basketball player in the world. I mean, what Jokic is doing, what he's done over the last 3 years, basically, if anybody needed any confirmation that those 2 MVPs in the 21 and 22 seasons were justified, he's certainly done that here, and probably should have been the MVP this year too, but everybody was terrified to give it again. So many of the metrics favored him. But, we've seen that before, like when Barkley won his MVP, that was after Jordan had won how many in a row. And Jordan was he was the best player in the league. By far, he was the best player in the league. But, Barkley had a great year. The Suns went to the finals. So it's almost like the writers and media felt, some type of guilt that they should give it to somebody else. And I think that, Joel Embiid had a fantastic year, but he's not better than Nikola Jokic. And it's just a joy to watch Jokic play. We are all, many of us, David, you and I don't, Paul and Craig, I don't know how old you are, but David and I certainly can go back and remember Bill Walton playing in college, and the best of Bill Walton. And a lot of us, we never really got to see the greatest of Sabonis in the NBA. If you watched international basketball back in that time before he ripped his Achilles, that's what it looked like. He is just extraordinary, and has an extraordinary feel for the game. And like Jeff Van Gundy was saying last night, I've never seen anyone with a softer touch. I mean, anytime the ball hits the rim, seemingly it goes in.
Yep, like a pillow.
And it's not like we're playing in the Boston Garden, which had the infamous sewers. where it hit the rim, and anybody can hit the rim and it would go in. The baskets are a little bit better made now than they were back then. But he's got incredible touch. He's learned how to shoot the three, and Miami is just too small. Literally, they are too small, and they are totally dependent on making their 3-point shots in order to stay with Denver. I mean, if you look at what Denver did last night, Denver had 60 points in the paint. They scored 105 points, 104 points last night, whatever it is. Scored 60 points in the paint. They took only 18 3-pointers. They took no 3-pointers in the fourth quarter. It was just a totally dominant, old-school butt kicking. And unless Miami makes their threes at the rate that they made them in Game 2, there's just no way for them to contend with that.
All right, so Tuesday morning, nobody saw this coming. Live, the PGA Tour. You and I have been covering sports, as you've mentioned, for a long time. I remember when the AFL eventually was able to morph into the NFL. Namath didn't hurt because of that win, or the Chiefs beating the Vikings. But your thoughts about this story for this week, one of the biggest I can remember in a long, long time.
It's the biggest story in sports this year, and there's nothing that will eclipse it. I mean, we may see a great fight later this summer with Bud Crawford and Errol Spence. We can see greatness on the football field, but there's nothing that rudimentarily or fundamentally will shake its sport compared to what we've just seen and what we've seen on Tuesday. But frankly, I knew this was going to come at some point. It had to come. But that anyone could have thought that literally 362 days or 363 days after Liv teed off for the first time in London, that there was going to be a merger, nobody was calling that shot. But it had to happen because both sides were adversely affected. I mean, Liv had distribution issues, and the tour didn't have the people that they really needed, that their sponsors needed, that the networks needed, to justify the prices that they've been asked to pay by the tour. So the tour was in trouble in a lot of ways, and so they made the deal with the person and the group that some would consider to be the devil. And sometimes you get into bed with people you don't want to get into. You do business with people you don't want to do, but you really have to. And none of us know how ultimately this is all going to play out. What the structure of professional golf is going to look like. But suffice to say that, Jay Monahan can talk bravely about the future of the tour and everything that he's going to do. But and that the tour has the majority of the seats on the new policy board. There's only one person that matters, and that is Yasser Al-Marayan, from the PIF. He's the one holding the purse strings. He who has the money has the most power, and he's got the money and he's got the power, and he will ultimately tell that board, how they're going to vote and what ultimately the structure of golf is going to look like.
What do you think I don't know if you've watched Live. I think I had 10 minutes of it on one time. Just wasn't interested, not because they don't have some guys that are elite, because obviously Brooks Koepka and others, but there's nothing that they're doing at their tournaments at Live that you think they'll bring to the PGA Tour events, is there?
Well, the team aspect is coming.
Right.
There's no question about that. Now, are they going to have shotguns? Probably not. Although I do see the value of shotguns because it forces everybody to play under the same conditions, as opposed to, the way we do it, generally speaking, morning, late, and then late and morning, going back and forth over the first two rounds. But I think, Liv addressed some things there by having the lead group always play, the course straight up from 1 through 18. And frankly, listen, golf courses oftentimes are designed because we want hole one to be here. We want a a drivable par 4 at this point in the golf course. We want a really difficult par 3 late, and we want a monster finishing hole, on 18. Well, what if you're playing a shotgun? Clearly, that's all thrown out the window. So there is that issue, but I do like the idea of everybody starting at the same time. But ultimately, you get to the weekend and you get to winning time. You play the tournament the way we've always played tournaments, with the leaders going off last. I think there's a lot of things to work through. I mean, I don't think you'll be seeing shorts, and I don't think you'll be hearing music during the course of play. Liv was trying to get to a younger audience, and I know there were some events, and especially overseas, where they did very, very well, and especially in Australia. But I think ultimately what's going to happen, guys, is that you're going to see a Formula One like tour where you'll have 25 events where the very best players in the world will play, and then add on the 4 majors, and then so that's basically 29 weeks of a tour, and then there's 23 other weeks where you're not playing, or you can do whatever you want to do, because the whole idea behind Live was to play less golf. And I think that's ultimately the goal here, to make sure that those sponsors who are being asked to pay the money that they're paying, that they get their money's worth, and they get the field that they're supposed to get. So again, we'll see how this all plays out, but it's kind of how I see it is Formula One, or like the tennis tour. You've got certain big events leading into the majors, and then there are other lower level events for the rest of the people to play where they can make money. And I think that's maybe what you see. And I will say that for the last 3 days, it's been almost impossible to get off of social media or get off the internet, because there's just so much to read, so much to try to wrap your arms around. And I think we're all kind of struggling to do that right now.
Yeah, but Chuck, one of the notes in the chat room, we need more Chuck Coopersteins. We appreciate your time as always. So I'll block my number, so we'll be in touch with you. Thank you as always, buddy. Love you, man. Be good. Great stuff as always. Appreciate your time.
Be good, David. Thanks. Take care, guys.
Chuck Cooperstein. There's a couple people in broadcasting that I've known, and people are entertainers. Some are more especially at one sport or two or three. He and Norm Hitzges, as far as the depth of everything across the board, among the best I've ever known or heard, with their depth of we could have discussed the Stanley Cup playoffs. We didn't have time because we're up against the start of the 4 o'clock hour.
Well, I think some company would be wise to, even though he can't do a full-time show anymore, maybe a Coop podcast for an hour a week where he just goes.
Yeah, he has a pretty good stretch that NBA season now.
That's why I say 1 hour a week where he can do it and kind of hit everything. I would listen to it. So,
I mean, I think the Live thing's interesting, but like I said, I'm not really even a golf fan. I just think historically it's a fascinating story. But did y'all see Rory talk?
Yep.
I mean, hadn't known if y'all saw that or not, but yeah, I mean, he talked. People have been waiting for him to talk, so he talked and got to hear his perspective, and he's going to fall in line like everybody else, and just. I guess, believe that this is all for the betterment of golf, which it probably is as a whole. But that's definitely the message I got from him, is that's how he's rationalizing it. And, what else is he going to do? I guess pick his clubs and go home or whatever. But it sounds like he's just going to, do what he's got to do and hope for the best is basically the message that he sent.
When we come back, Notre Dame has a new AD, not now, but in 2024. That story. We'll have that here on 365 Sports. Also, Mickey Spagnola, the Cowboys in their mandatory mini camps that are wrapping up. His thoughts as Mike McCarthy and others have been talking. This is 365 Sports. Texas Beef House. We just had Memorial Day weekend, and really any type of weekend throughout the summer with family reunions, or you just personally what you want to put on the grill. Wagyu beef. Farm-raised, home-raised Wagyu beef. Right there just outside of Tyler in White House, Texas, the Duvall family. Aaron Duvall, Samantha, who's in charge of marketing, sent me some notes, and I gave you these for Memorial Day. it's worth getting in touch with him. And all you have to do is go to TexasBeefHouse.com. There's a phone number. You can call a couple of different people and order. And as I mentioned, Kim Coulter ordered a bunch of gift boxes for a lot of different people with all the variety of Wagyu beef. The family bundle. Right now for the summer, 4th of July around the corner, the sampler bundle, a variety of all of their hamburger products, from hamburger patties, regular, Wagyu beef, jalapeno and cheese patties, ground beef itself, summer sausage, and garlic links. Also the Great Divide package, total of 20 pounds of product, a mixture of the hamburger patties and ground beef, and the jalapeno and cheese Great Divide package, 20 pounds of product, mixture of jalapeno and cheese, patties, and ground beef. Waco, again, we appreciate their support of Texas Beef House. They're going to send Blake Blackmar some product for him to use during some of our tailgate shows. They're going to have their product at the pregame, the tailgate, before the Baylor and Utah game as well. I've talked to Aaron many different times. TexasBeefHouse.com is the website. You can order steaks, brisket, sausage, burgers, whatever you want. Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from your pasture, their pasture, to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
At It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Earlier today, Paul, in a group text that includes Craig, me, and Garrett at times, and some of those too, sent the note out that Jack Swarbrick, Notre Dame AD, will leave in 2024. NBC Sports Chairman Pete Bavacqua has been named Special Assistant to the President for Athletics and eventually will take over when Swarbrick is gone from that role. We're joined by Mike Frank, Irish Sports Daily, on exactly what this means. Mike, was this something people could see coming?
I don't know if anybody really saw it coming as far as this quickly, but I think that a lot of people felt that Swarbrick was kind of at the end of his road with Notre Dame, and when you look at the situation, Father John, I know, who's the president of Notre Dame, also has, his contract will be up soon, and some people speculate as to whether he'll continue on as the president. So it's almost like they're kind of getting their ducks in a row for both of these guys to bounce out and get the new guys in. I think it's a little bit surprising in that they quickly just kind of put a guy in place. Normally you'd see some research and all that type of stuff before they do that. But I don't know. Obviously, they feel very, very highly about Pete Bavacqua, and obviously he's had a lot of success with NBC. There's already a relationship there. So it makes sense in a lot of ways, but I think a lot of people were a little bit surprised that it came this quickly, but I think most people felt within a couple of years his time was probably done at Notre Dame.
Mike, about a month ago, we got reports that Notre Dame was expecting upwards of $75 million a year in their next TV deal. And I would think this goes a long way to hitting that number when you hire the guy with your television partner who knows exactly how much money they have and where they spend it.
Well, I think that's you have to wonder if that's what's going on here. And it's been kind of up in the air as far as what Notre Dame will do with their TV deal because, as has been mentioned, it's up after this year. And so trying to figure out who the partner is and that type of thing. And I know that there's been lots of talks and things like that. But seeing this kind of line up, you just almost have to wonder if there's already some sort of agreement or it was leaning in that way. And, this was a nice, smooth transition between the two. We haven't heard that that's the case, but it just seems kind of strange that this whole thing just kind of lined up the way it did.
Mike, do you see this? I saw just a couple of, I guess the comments in reaction to the headlines and things of that nature. Does this indicate that perhaps big change is on the horizon with Notre Dame? I'm sure you've been asked a million times about conferences and Notre Dame and would they ever join one and all that. Does this move in any way, move the needle in I guess, shining a light on that potential future of them remaining as is or one day, fulfilling that dream so many people seem to have of seeing them join a conference?
I've been one to say that I really think that they'll end up in a conference at some point. I think it's inevitable just based off the way things are. To be honest, I think they'd probably be in a conference had they not had the situation with the ACC and their contract there. So they're just losing too much money as far as compared to the SEC and the Big Ten deals. When you look at the ad rev, the TV rights and all that type of stuff. So I would be surprised if they weren't in a conference at some point. It's all going to depend on what happens with the ACC and will that blow up. And it's interesting that the power brokers in that conference seem to be pushing for that thing to implode, and if nothing else, to get a larger stake in what is coming through as far as the money goes. So it will be interesting. Swarbrick was a guy who negotiated the deal with the ACC, and because of the independence, I think that was the big driving factor. But sometimes you sit back and you look. I think at the time it looked like a really good deal, but this deal now has kind of put Notre Dame in a bad situation in that they can't go to the Big Ten if the Big Ten wants them. They can't go to the SEC if the SEC wants them. They're just kind of stuck in limbo with this ACC contract. It made sense at the time when he made this decision, and he and Father John, it allowed them to remain independent. And I know a lot of Irish fans, that is, something that they value. Me personally, I don't see a whole lot of value in it other than for recruiting purposes. But the way things have gone lately with recruiting, I think all that is changing as well. So with the portal and NIL and all the craziness that's going on, it really has become a different way of recruiting here in the last couple of years. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I would be surprised if Notre Dame isn't in some sort of conference within 5 years. And that's, of course, provided that the ACC blows up. And I feel that the money's going to be the difference in money between what the Big Ten and the SEC gets versus what the ACC will get will be so drastic that people are going to push that as far as they can to see if they can get that to implode.
Mike, I've always thought, and I think a lot of others have said this too, but that they remain independent until they can't. That it's a great thing to be. Not many schools, a handful, maybe, are good enough, strong enough, have a large enough base to be independent, but they are. And until the college football playoff basically forces their hand. Do you think that's true too?
I think that's the plan. That's certainly what they want to do. And, they hope their hand is never forced, period. And really, if the playoff expands to 12 teams, as long as Notre Dame is involved in the discussion of that and they carve a space out for them being one of the 12 teams, they may not have to move at all. And I know a lot of Irish fans would prefer that. And I think that makes sense in some regards as well. But really, when you think of the independent, it really is only one sport. It's football. Mm-hmm. Everything else is an ACC. So really, what is the difference other than some sort of bragging rights thing? There really is no big difference between it. I just think that Irish fans like to be able to say that, well, we're an independent school, but really they're not. They're only independent in football.
Would this move, though, by hiring the NBC Sports president when you've got your media rights deal, would this be I wouldn't say the last-ditch effort, but a strong effort to make sure you stay independent? Because if you can get them $75 million a year, the gap is pretty much closed.
Yeah, it depends on what the number is. And again, I think that this is some maneuvering that Notre Dame is doing. And I'm sure NBC was worried that when you look at what's going on with Fox and ABC and ESPN and Amazon, a lot of people think we'll get in the game and all these different outlets. It's going to be a situation where it could be pretty competitive. And so my guess is they've been partners together for quite some time, and they just look for a way to make this happen and make it smooth. And when Father John and Jack Swarbrick, they want to leave the situation better than they found it. I think right now, if they left today, both of them could proudly say that they left the situation better than they found it. And I think that that's really what they're trying to do here. Is neither one of them, I don't think, will be along for a while. We know Jack is certainly not. And I think they're just trying to, I guess, create their own legacy and make sure that it's a positive one. And so I would expect that, we have the athletic apparel that's also up right now. So there's a lot of irons in the fire that they have to get ironed out. And my guess is they want to get all that done before the next president and obviously Pete come in and take over as AD.
I almost actually mentioned Notre Dame as a conference, which, again, I know they're a part of all their conferences except independent in football. But we've seen now this push for those who have been a part of media, those who have been a part of networks in some ways. Your mark was a very unique hire, or what Kleofkoff came from. And now what others. Do you think that was important then, that connection to what Bavakwa has been doing?
I think so. Yeah, it's hard to get into their heads. I know that there's some very bright people. I know that this is something that has been discussed for quite some time. What is the plan? How are we going to do this? And obviously these plans are 10, 15-year commitments sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure that you're making smart decisions. And so I know this is something that's been kicked around for quite some time. And the full extent of it, what it'll all be when it's all said and done, I don't have a clue. But I do think that they have been very, proactive in trying to set all of this up. So it's a smooth transition, and we'll have to see. But obviously, Pete is a alum of Notre Dame, and I think that certainly helps. They want somebody who understands what Notre Dame's about. He played football. He was a walk-on punter under Lou Holtz, and so he kind of knows that whole situation. And I think it's a good hire in that regard. And we'll just have to see. You just never know when these hires happen, how all this is going to unfold.
Is Notre Dame a place that will, especially for that job, stay, I don't want to say in-house, but like alums are important for, because Swarbrick's obviously an alum as well?
I think it is, in that it's such a unique place. And it's not unique in that, it's anything. I'm not saying that it's special or anything like that. What I'm saying is you have to understand that kind of the inner workings of how it all works. And it is such a different process than just your standard university. You have the priests that take a very large role in how all this unfolds, and they have a large say on everything. And then you're also dealing with the board of trustees, and so there are a lot of people who have opinions on this. And then you have the academic side, and that's a bigger problem than people realize, because the academic side says, why are you spending so much money on football? You should be, spending it more on the academic side. We're a higher education institution. We're not a football factory. So there's a whole lot of politics that are involved. And, somebody coming from Ball State, nothing against Ball State or whoever their athletic director is, it would be a completely different situation. And just the politics of it and understanding who greases the wheels at various situations, I think it's advantageous if you've been around and you kind of understand that.
Mike, one more thing. Football, of course, around the corner with their coach and what he did the first year. It didn't get off to a great start with Freeman, but just the expectations as they move into year two with him, with Marcus Freeman.
Well, I think a lot of people anticipated a little bit of a downfall. I mean, it's the first time he's ever been a head coach, and there are things that you're going to have to learn. And you can read stuff in a book. You can talk to people on the phone, but until you're actually in it and amongst it and trying to figure out how to balance, and so many people are pulling you in so many different ways. I think he's kind of learned and has learned from some mistakes. I liked how he's bounced back. He's had some, really kind of humiliating defeats, once against Marshall and another against a bad Stanford team, and was able to get the team to bounce back. They played in the bowl, weren't playing very well. He came in and talked to them at halftime. They came out and played much better and won the bowl game. So to me, I think that is really the making of what is a great coach. And that is, can you fix problems when things are going wrong? And can you steady the ship? I think that's 80-85% of being able to last as a head coach is, can you overcome the valleys? And a lot of coaches can't do that. And there's been a lot of evidence to suggest he can. I think he's out of central casting as far as what you want as a person and as a leader. I know that the fans are really behind him far, far more than they ever were Brian Kelly. A lot of fans just didn't think Brian Kelly was very sincere, and they do feel that Marcus is. Marcus does a really good job with recruiting. He's trying to fix a lot of things that they've had problems, and it just takes time when you do it. And again, going back to they have their football building is almost 20 years old, and so they need to get some advancement on that. A lot of people thought that this would be done by now. It's still not done, and so it's just a tough situation at Notre Dame where if you're at Texas or you're at Texas A&M and you need something done, you make a few phone calls and it gets done pretty quick. That just doesn't happen at Notre Dame like a lot of people think it should or does.
Mike, appreciate it. Appreciate the insight, the knowledge, and also the coverage of today. The story with Swarbrick moving on, Bavacqua taking over in 2024, and also being on the Notre Dame administrative staff, very much so. Thanks for your time, Mike Frank, who's also teamed with Christian McCollum on the Irish Daily, Sports Daily. We appreciate their time. Coming up next, Mickey Spagnola. Cowboys have had that mandatory mini camp. Mike McCarthy's discussed how his schedule has changed and how when it comes to what he does now that he's also taking over the play calling duties. All of that. Craig's off the radar. Paul's top 5 and Brian Murphy on today's that summit in D.C. with a lot of different people involved in college athletic. And this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. 5 locations in the Waco area, including Belmead and Shada Spring, Hewitt and Woodway, and also in Robinson. Marco's Pizza with the pepperoni magnifico, the sausage magnifico, and then, of course, it makes sense because they're both popular to have the pepperoni and sausage magnifico loaded up with more pepperoni and sausage than you could imagine. They have salads and pizza bowls. They have drinks and more. They have wings if you want. And Bob Mock, the owner, has been in the pizza business with other companies for a long, long time. Took over his own. Started Marco's Pizza. There were none. And recently now there are 5. The fastest growing pizza company or brand in America and among the top 5 in all of the country. It's Marco's Pizza. 5 locations in Waco. Pizza lovers get it.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Why did you get into this business?
We kind of were born into it, and it's been for several generations. Our family's been in the beef business, the ranching business, and we've specifically got into the beef business back in about 2015 when me and my son decided to form Texas Beef House and sell directly to the public.
Aaron, everyone knows about Wagyu and how elite that is when it comes to beef. What separates you from anyone else that may do this in this type profession?
We selected out Wagyu mainly because it's such a quality beef and it's consistent. Some beef, some breeds, you may have a good animal every now and then, but Wagyu produces really consistently good beef every time.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with Mickey Spagnola of DallasCowboys.com.
Prescott fires, caught, Lamb, touchdown.
Brought to you by the First National Bank of Central Texas, with 5 locations to serve you.
Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. Cowboys, of course, this week with the mandatory minicamp and not around, about a month and a half away eventually from training camp, then preseason. The games begin in September. Mickey, thanks for your time with Paul, Craig, and Smokey. So how has Mike McCarthy kind of discussed adding the play calling duties, and how much does that affect, right now?
Well, I think it's a lot of him spending maybe more time with Dak, making sure he knows what Dak likes, what he doesn't, what adjustments they might make on some routes. And, not just routes, and I don't know how much Dak has to do with this, but adjustments in protections, and just, getting a better understanding of working together. I don't think you just say, okay, I'm calling plays and we'll do it my way. I don't think Mike operates that way. So, yeah, I think it was more of a closer learning experience for the two. And then Mike getting back into, making the play calls. Dak getting used to his accent, right, and how he does things. And Dan Quinn had an interesting thing to say today, just looking at, and he's gone through that, right? You're the head coach and somebody else is calling your plays, and now you're the defensive coordinator and you're calling the plays. And he basically said today, you can see that Mike's having a blast. He said his juices are flowing. So, yeah, it's kind of a learning experience over these last 4 or 5 weeks. And now they take a break and get back together late July.
Mickey, he made kind of a strange comment, and I think, the Twitterverse took it as a dig at Kellen Moore, but he said this is the first time we're running the offense that we want to run, or something in that vein. I'm paraphrasing. Was that just because he is now, after experimenting for a couple years and running the offense that kind of wanted to hit the ground running with Dak, that he's bending into more of his style as opposed to like he was let off the reins for 3 years?
Yeah, and I don't know if he meant the way the offense is run, but maybe the timing of plays and things like that. Because I think the last thing that anybody here on this new offensive staff needs to do is criticize a team that when Dak came back from his injury last year, they went 10 consecutive games at averaging 35 points a game. Now, if you can do 40, then okay, go ahead and criticize, right? And I don't think that's what he even wants to get into that area of doing, because this offense was awfully good last year. And the problem is that when you get beat in a playoff game and you only score 12 points, then it clouds over everything you accomplished over a 17-game season.
Mickey, how much do they actually get done with these mini camps, with all these again, the contracts. Is this more of the underwear Olympics, or is there some full throttle stuff?
No, there's no full throttle stuff. This is the powder puff Olympics. It's more about, David, assignment, being assignment ready, assignment accurate, getting the young guys integrated into how you run things and how you run your offense and defense. And Dan Quinn even explains that, and it's a time to experiment to see what guys can't do. He says, I try to give everybody a lot to do, different things, multiple things, and then see if they fit in. He goes, I don't want to get to training camp and start trying to experiment. Well, this guy's a defensive end, but can he play linebacker? Or this guy is a linebacker, but can he play a big safety? And then he goes, you can experiment during these times because everything's at a slower pace. There's no physical activity whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, when they got to the minicamp, I think the second day he said, McCarthy said that they took out the 11-on-11 2-minute drill. He says, because my guys are too aggressive. In other words, he didn't want to get fined another $100,000 for having too physical of a workout in these very regulated workouts during the mini camp and the OTAs.
Mickey, Jalen Tolbert in year 2, this is a critical year for him. I mean, obviously, because the Cowboys, went out and got Brandon Cooks because, Jalen Tolbert didn't show himself to be ready, and plus they needed more playmakers anyway. Michael Gallup, from everything you've seen and everybody's hearing is perfectly healthy and feels like himself again. So for him to establish himself, year 2 is pretty important that they can maybe rely on him down the road. What have you seen from Jalen Tolbert, and how important has Brandon Cooks been to him in that just short time they've been together?
Yeah, both of those things. As a matter of fact, Brian Schottenheimer spoke about when everybody asked him about Brandon Cooks, about his speed. He goes, but he's more than the speed. He goes, he's got experience. And he says, you should see the amount of time that he spends with the younger guys. And he said, go ask Jalen Tolbert how much Brandon Cooks has meant to him. And he'll tell you the amount of time that Cooks has spent with him. Yeah, I mean, it's his second year, though. Not everybody's a Pro Bowler their first year. And he was a little overwhelmed, I think, when the lights came on. I mean, South Alabama, the Dallas Cowboys versus the Giants at MetLife Stadium, a little bit different. And from what I've seen of him in these workouts that we get to watch, it looks like he's put on some serious strength. I just thought he was kind of a skinny, frail receiver last year, and that ain't the case at this point. And he seems to be playing with more confidence, catching the ball, and I think he has a better understanding of what they expect out of the routes and how detailed you absolutely have to be. Because I'm guessing, and this is nothing against South Alabama, but it is South Alabama. And I'm guessing when you're a pretty physical, talented player, you can get away with some stuff at that level. Well, not at this level. So I think he's learned that, but he looks like a different player. And if they need we know who the first 3 receivers are, right? At this point, I would say he's 4th.
Speaking of receivers, Brandon Cooks, who I thought was a really sneaky, damn good trade. I always thought he was a good receiver, but I did not realize that he was as much a deep threat with his pure speed. And have you, again, it's not full throttle, but can you kind of just see that watching him run routes?
Well, especially yesterday, because as he explained to me after everybody kind of went away, that was the first time in the practices they ran a go route. And the first go route he ran, Dak actually overthrew him. And I didn't think anybody can overthrow this guy the way I saw him running, right? And he said, yeah. And he goes, but that was the first go right we ran. He says, so we came back and I explained to him if I'm even, I'm winning, and you just throw it to the inside, not the outside. And they ran it the second time, and it looked like Dak overthrew him. And you remember the old cartoon Wile E. Coyote, the road runner? All of a sudden, Cooks hit a beep speed and caught up with it. And I think everybody was rather amazed watching how fast the guy is, and still is. And, and I don't, I'd have to dig into every instance, but he's been on so many teams, but yet 6 of the last 8 years, he's been a 1,000-yard receiver. One of the ones he wasn't was last year with the quarterback challenge Texans. So this guy, he's got something, and you're right. I think it was a sneaky trade that I don't know everybody realized what they pulled off by just giving up two. Was it a draft choice or two? One was 1 draft choice and one was 2. The other one, Stephon Gilmore, who another good veteran addition to this team. And even though they're not allowed to be physical to try to break up passes when they're 7-on-7 or the 11-on-11 walkthrough, you can see his instincts are still there.
I was just about to ask you about Kelvin Joseph, because that move's allowed them to move him to slot corner, which Deron Bland was really a revelation as a mid-round pick last year for them. But Kelvin Joseph's had a couple really tumultuous off seasons, dealing maturity issues and different things like that. How do you think that helps him moving forward, that he'll get to play a little bit different role? Because it's about, it's down to nut cutting time for him too.
Well, I don't think he's overtaken Deron Bland. Let's put it that way. He may be the backup guy in the slot, because it sure looks like Jordan Lewis is going to start training camp on PUP, and then we'll see where he's at after his Liz Frank surgery. He's still rehabbing, and that doesn't sound like he's anytime close ready to play football. As for Kelvin Joseph, they're trying him in the slot. They've seen what he can do on the outside. Now can you do more things? And they obviously need a backup in the slot, and he should be, with all the other young guys there, he's kind of the next guy up. So they look at Bland as the starter in the slot. I think if something happens to one of the outside guys, then Bland's probably the next guy. But keep an eye on the 6th-round draft choice Eric Scott, Southern Mississippi. They traded up to the first pick in the draft to take this kid, and he's bounced around. He's had some of his problems from Illinois State to Butler Community College, then finally to Southern Mississippi. And then all of a sudden the Cowboys say, whoa, wait a minute, we're going to trade a next year draft pick, a 5th rounder, to pick this guy in the 6th round. So they saw something in it. And as a matter of fact, in some of these practices when they've been in team, and again, it's kind of a walkthrough pace team, he got some reps with the first team at cornerback on the right side. So he's another guy that will be vying for, I don't know if it'll be playing time, but to play special teams. And again, Kelvin Joseph was a pretty good special teams player, and you kind of need those guys too. Would they like him to flourish and show that he can do more than one thing? Absolutely. And you'd like to see it in your 3rd year from a guy that you spent a 2nd-round pick on.
Mickey, have a great weekend as well. Thanks for your time as always.
Okay, talk to you guys.
Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com, Thursdays, usually around 4:25 or so with us. And now coming up next, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas. My dentist, Dr. Steve Childress, is phenomenal. I went over there, had a regular teeth cleaning schedule, then all of a sudden I had told them when they prepped me maybe a week before, I had this, I felt like perhaps a tooth that had cracked back right molar in the lower level and lower jaw. And so they worked on that. And, yeah, they had to fix something up. And At some point, I'll probably have to do more work. But Dr. Childress made that just like a very comfortable situation. And yes, a needle was involved, but it was still something I needed done, and I know it. I don't wait now like, oh, I think something's wrong, and then you're scared to go to the dentist. I go there whether I'm going to have an injection in my jaw, my gum, or whatever, because I know that's what's best for me. And hey, I get it. People are scared to go to the dentist, especially when you have not taken care of your dental hygiene, and I do that as much as I possibly can every single day. And then I'm going to go back sometime in early July and probably have a root canal or whatever, but it won't be even worse if I keep waiting. You need to listen to me because I waited way too long and eventually had some traumatic type dental work done. Dr. Steve Childress in Robinson, Texas, Stonewood Dental.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs. Knowing you, that's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Price right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome in Off the Radar here on 365 Sports as we do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 4:45. it being this segment where we take a look around a variety of different headlines, sometimes having to do with college football, a lot of the times not, but did see, I guess you just retweeted some interesting Greg Sankey quotes on the fact that he's hoping that expansion's done for right now, that realignment is done for right now. But, we'll get into that, I suppose, here in a little bit later, and can focus in the meantime on some other things that are going on, because we've certainly got plenty of time for realignment, and that is very much on the radar most every day. But let's start off with some Lionel Messi. Also got some NFL news, also got some other college sports news, and a busy night on television. But Lionel Messi turned down nearly $1 billion from a Saudi Arabian club to make his way to America and to join Inter Miami as their newest star and by far the biggest star in Major League Soccer. Well, he's already having an impact on the fan base and the fandom down there, as all tickets have been sold out, and resale tickets are in the $800 to $3,500 resale price range, just simply as a result of Messi's addition. Every single MLS match that Inter Miami will play this year across the entire scope is now sold out. So the biggest star in the game coming to America, and is already having an impact, and that's part of why you signed him up the way that that's why you did it, was to bring that attraction, and certainly he's already paying dividends there. So, we've seen other guys previously, but this is a whole different level. This is like arguably the GOAT, So this isn't David Beckham winding down his career coming to L.A., or, whatever, Zlatan, who, retired here last week, or any other big-name guys who have come over from, overseas leagues. This is the dude, and tickets are sold out. So good luck trying to catch him. And if you do catch him and you haven't already gotten your tickets, that means you're paying a pretty price on StubHub or wherever else they sell tickets.
I don't know what his age was, but Pele, of course, was soccer's king. I always remember a Sports Illustrated cover with him. Pele came to the United States to play with what was then a soccer league, and I think it was in New York, and that had a massive, that's even back maybe 30 years ago, longer.
Maybe 50 years ago.
Yeah, and he had a huge impact. I think this one is much more than even that, and Pele is maybe the greatest player to ever play the game. But this is the tickets. This is amazing for the United States in soccer.
When I texted Jack yesterday when the story dropped, I said maybe we need to get some tickets in Dallas or Austin. Then he said, well, good luck, it'll be the most expensive one. And now I think that we just need to achieve Jack's dream of making him a credentialed soccer journalist so that he can go and see Messi. I think he'd be all for that.
He would be tingling. Pele was in 75, so you're right.
Yeah, he's working on other things right now, but I can tell you he would love it. But I'd like to go watch great athletes, whatever at the point in their career. I almost got to watch Michael Jordan play baseball, and it got rained out. So I'll always have that. Same thing with Bo Jackson. Of course, I think they were on the same team at the same time. But yeah, I'll go watch anybody do anything anytime, and I think it's great for the MLS that he's there at a time where it is the twilight of his career, but he just won the World Cup. He was still very much in demand, and could have stayed in Europe if he wanted to, and came over.
Yeah, the ticket prices, according to TMZ, for home games, they went from a range of $15 to $200, they went from going from about $15 to now $230. So that's what you saw as far as a bump at home. For away games, which are all now sold out as well, they went from an average of $53 to $251. So, yeah, he brings the eyeballs, he brings it, or puts butts in seats, and brings a lot of money with him. So we'll see how long that, that sort of initial, bump lasts, that initial jolt by bringing him over. But, yeah, this isn't like every other, guy who's come over. This is a whole different animal in Lionel Messi, so he's having a major effect in MLS.
There was a thought that Pele, when he arrived in the mid-'70s, that eventually, even though it was 20 years later, his arrival led to one day the World Cup being played in our country in 1994. That's the kind of impact, even though it takes a while. I'm not sure, because I don't know how long out in front they have them, but man, when I saw that story, I got Inter Miami. Okay, is that really Miami? Absolutely, and it's been fun to watch that.
Yeah, so the Big Ten has introduced their new scheduling models for 2024 and 2025, the Flex Protect Plus football schedule, and there's a lot to unpack from this. Like, I would imagine if you're doing like a Big Ten podcast, that you've got like 2 hours to just discuss the schedule and don't have to even touch on anything else. And it's way too much to sort of unpack here. I know that initially Nebraska fans are pissed, apparently, because they got a really rough draw, although I don't know if Matt Rule's commented on it officially. I just saw a tweet in passing where, people were complaining about the schedule, and someone made the comment of whether it was because they were informed by him or not that, Matt Rule's not worried about it. And, we know him. I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he's just ready to plow through and play whoever they've got. But we do know who's going to play who now over the next couple of years, although they don't have the details on weekends and exactly, what dates and things of that nature. But it's apparently took them, according to the article in The Athletic, 171 versions to arrive at the final setup. The most difficult part will be the building and sequencing the dates, because you have to work around, according to one of the quotes in there, the non-conference games, and those vary and all of that. So they still have to iron that out, but they have tried to check every box, and it seems like, it's a pretty interesting look to see who the permanent opponents are and the rotating opponents. And the point being that by, I think it's 2025, everybody will have played everybody in some form or fashion.
Twice every 4 years, if they're not your so-called rival opponent.
But then it gets a little confusing, and that's what I mean is I was sitting here trying to figure it out as best I could. But like the rotating opponents versus some have perma opponents, some don't, some it depends on years. Like it's not just black and white. Like there's a little bit of gray in some areas that I need to just read more about. But interesting to see that released. Interesting to see who USC, UCLA are going to be playing, who some of the bigger matchups will be, and obviously this will be no division. So we can get into it a little bit. But what did y'all just initial impressions looking at it?
Let me go to Nebraska real quick.
Yeah.
Remember the first year they joined the Big Ten?
Yeah.
Do you know who they played that first year?
Yeah.
Remember
it was the
back
gauntlet.
then they had Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State. I think that was the year before they played Baylor, a year or two before they won the Big Ten. Iowa, and then Minnesota, Northwestern, and Minnesota and Northwestern are as good, if not better. But, yeah, they seem to, no matter what. Remember during COVID when they got bitch slapped because they were complaining about wanting to play, you know what? I don't know how these all work.
I know their schedule in 24, Iowa, Northwestern, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, Indiana, Michigan State, Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Just get better. Shut up and get better. But that one, when they started, they played every single team that mattered in the Big Ten their opening year.
Yeah.
And they were actually pretty good, made a bowl game.
Here's what I think. I commend the Big Ten, long the conference of no innovation. I mean, they were
sluggish.
Jim Delaney was the one of we're not going to innovate. We're not going to do this. This is how college athletics is going to be. I've spoken. Now please leave me alone. I do think this is innovative, and it's taken all the scheduling mistakes of the past. The Big 12, when they formed, was really dumb in that they separated North and South and then did this rotating thing where it ended some rivalries and took the juice. Like they were not this should have been the early test case of hey, if you take your best TV games off of TV every couple of years, maybe you shouldn't do that. And with television driving this thing, this is going to be the most important TV games. Yeah, Penn State does not have an every year rival. Okay, they don't. But again, they are relative newbies to the conference too. I know that most people may not realize that, but they were a major independent until the 90s, and then they joined the Big Ten, so they don't have 100-year rivalries like Michigan, Ohio State, or Michigan, Michigan State, or Iowa, and all these things that were in the league. I like the innovation of it. It's a little bit confusing, Craig, like you said, but at least they're going to have their best games on TV every year.
Twice every 4 years, they're going to have big boy games.
And you're always going to have the big boy games and crossing over, and you're not going to wait, 14 years to play somebody once.
Yeah, it just gets confusing when they talk about Flex Protect Plus. I mean, that's the name of the scheduling model, but then they get into two play opponents, and there's little intricacies to where, like I said, it's not all just black and white, like you know everything about everything for the next several years. There's little caveats that have to be made because of one scheduling issue or another. Maybe this rivalry game doesn't get played the exact same spot it has been because that's what they had to do. But there are 11 rivalries that are permanent given the schedule that will be played every single year. That includes Michigan-Ohio State, of course, Michigan-Michigan State, Minnesota-Wisconsin.
A note about Michigan State. There were some fans that said it doesn't mean as much. The AD manual at Michigan said we must protect that rivalry with Michigan State, and I understand why they wouldn't. I like the fact that they're still going to play.
Who would have thought that's
maybe the fans are bored with it. I don't know. I can't. I never would have known that.
Michigan State, Minnesota-Wisconsin, Minnesota-Iowa, Wisconsin-Iowa, Nebraska-Iowa, Indiana-Purdue, Illinois-Purdue, Illinois-Northwestern, USC-UCLA, and Maryland-Rutgers. Those are all the permanent 11 rivalries that will be played every single year, and each team will, have their own variations, but everybody should play everybody within a couple of years and not have some nonsense like it's, you don't see anybody for like 10 years when you've been in the league.
Like A&M and Georgia.
Like the A&M and Georgia example that always comes up. So if you got some time to kill and you're really interested in scheduling and how all that works and this new era where we're going into of, having the most loaded matchups possible, it certainly gives you some of that and a lot to sort through. So fun to see that drop, and I believe the SEC's is coming out very, very soon. I just saw it earlier, and I don't want to say I don't think it's tomorrow, but it's it's very soon. I think that SEC schedule for the 2024 season should be coming out from what I saw earlier.
Well, look, it might be good. I'm not going to knock it, but the Big Ten has trumped them in a big way here with the way that they had all their fighting, and the Big Ten came up with this really innovative way, and the SEC is going to come out. That's kind of like the opening act coming on after Elton John. I've seen Rocket Man. I don't.
You know what? The SEC copy and paste what the Big Ten did and shut up. Just do it.
I think they should copy and paste the schedule the way that they did it.
Copy and paste that algorithm or the formula and move on.
All right. Well, like I said, that schedule will be released soon, June 14th, the official date that we will find out. So less than a week away from getting our eyes on that 2024 schedule that will now include Oklahoma and Texas as well. So that'll be very interesting to check out. Meanwhile, got a lot of action on the tube tonight, but first, a couple of NFL, or I guess a couple just transaction type notes. For one, weird story out of Orlando and newcomer to the Big 12, UCF, which that'll become official in less than a month's time now, July 1st, when the new four are officially known as members in the Big 12, but they're in search of a baseball coach, and news came out earlier today that Joe Girardi, who was expected to, I guess, be named the next man in charge of the Knights, has decided to not accept the position as head baseball coach at the University of Central Florida. I didn't know much about this, but I saw it and I was like, wow, that would have been cool, and then realized, well, this is not the news that you want if you think it'd be cool, but he had been offered the position, and, I guess was thought to perhaps be taking it, but nope, he is not going to be the next manager of UCF and their Knights baseball program.
That would have been cool for UCF to get Joe Girardi.
Yeah.
But I wonder, and again, college and professional baseball are really, really different. I mean, it's still baseball, but Joe Girardi, for all his baseball knowledge, from what I'm aware of, given that he's been a professional baseball player and then a coach and manager for the last probably 30 years of his life, has never recruited. And that, to me, would be the only red flag on Joe Girardi.
Yeah,
not that he couldn't learn how to do it. It just, he's behind the eight ball when it comes to other guys who've been doing it for a long time.
Well, apparently they had gone pretty far down the road in negotiations. Yeah. This wasn't I think that they decided they don't want him. I think this was they thought they were getting him, and then for some reason or another, he decided or whatever, but he had discussed staff positions. He discussed assistant coaches within the last 24 hours. They had also started making preparations for a press conference tomorrow. So, it seems to be
what happened.
Yeah, they thought it was going to, take place, but it's not. So no Joe Girardi to go lead that UFC baseball or UCF baseball program. Meanwhile, the Suns have apparently are in the process of releasing 12-time All-Star Chris Paul, so he will become a free agent. Also, transaction-wise, and I know there's a lot of talk about Chris Paul and all of that and the ramifications, but I'll leave that to more of the hoops heads since we are also a little bit short on time. But also, Broncos have signed Frank Clark after, pretty impactful stint with the Chiefs and some Super Bowls and all that good stuff. 1 year, $7.5 million deal. So rather than having to face him and having that be a little bit of a nightmare from time to time for Russell Wilson, whoever's back there pulling the trigger, they now got their enemy to join them. So Frank Clark now a member of the Denver Broncos after 4 years with Kansas City. And then a lot of sports on tonight. I mean, there is a lot going on. Not NBA Finals, though. Last night we saw Denver take control of the series 2-1, or take the lead in the series 2-1, winning 109-84 over the Miami Heat. Game 4 will be tomorrow night in Miami. But on the docket for later on this evening, you got the Stanley Cup Finals, game number 3. The Vegas Golden Knights up 2-0. Oh, I was just thinking about... So they're the Golden Knights and UCFs that don't call us the Golden Knights.
We didn't call you that.
No.
I did a long time ago, and I learned a lesson.
But the team that likes to be called the Golden Knights, they're up 2-0 right now, been pretty dominant, and they will be on the road against the Florida Panthers down in the Miami area. That'll be on TNT at 7 p.m. Garrett, any thoughts on what we've seen so far and what we may see later on tonight?
I mean, I would like to see Florida get a dub, but I don't see it, man. Like Vegas, the way they've controlled the game, the intensity, I just see them probably getting the sweep, honestly.
Yeah, I don't even
You're
pay.
a hater. You're a Florida Panthers hater.
I'm just saying.
I don't pay much close attention to it, but that sure seems to be the way the tea leaves are kind of reading right now. Is this is going to be a Vegas win? Just at some point or another, how quickly can they do it? And
like Denver and Miami,
pretty much, yeah.
I think Miami's won a game.
Yeah,
so
no, that's true, but they haven't played a home game, Florida, so that's tonight, right? So if they're going to win one, you'd think it would be.
It has to be tonight, yeah.
Yep. So that'll be later on this evening on TNT at 7 p.m. And then also a little college action. You got the softball. World Series National Championship could be won later on tonight. Game number 2, Oklahoma and Florida State. Oklahoma won game number 1 last night, 5-0. They're attempting to become the second team to win 3 in a row in softball. That will be at 6:30 on ESPN. With the win last night, the shutout, they extended the Sooners their Division I winning streak. It's a record to 52 straight games. So the new record, potentially 53, would win them a national title, their 3rd in a row, later on tonight. And, thoughts, Paul, Florida State guy, on what you expect?
Well, Florida State's a softball school.
I wish them the best of luck, and everybody knows that teams get at their most cocky and vulnerable when they're going for their 53rd win in a row.
Absolutely.
Like 52, you're not going to stop a team that's on their 51st win going for their 52nd, but their 52nd going for their 53rd.
That could be the difference. It's like if you birdie the first 17 holes in golf, you're not going to birdie 18. It's just not going to happen.
So it's not going to happen. No, the first 4 innings were very tense last night in that they kept them. It was shut out
in arm's distance, right? They were like,
it was 0-0, and then you just kept waiting. Like I'm checking on my phone and watching a little bit, and I just kept waiting to flip back up.
You weren't watching the game
on my phone, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
but you weren't in front of your TV.
No. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm gonna watch the whole thing, but I'm invested because it's my school. That I want them to do well, but you just kept feeling it, especially following checking tweets on it, that Oklahoma's about to do something here.
Yeah.
And I think what happened was they went 4 innings or so without scoring a run and got really mad. and then
the dam broke. And there was a defensive play in that game by a girl named Mudge, her last name, who robbed Florida State of what could have been, hey, we're right back in this thing.
She was the one that went to the D.C. hearing earlier this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Kaylee Mudge,
yes.
So that'll be going on later on tonight. Oklahoma potentially setting a new record and making some history. But Florida State does have some say in that, so we will see later on tonight on ESPN. College baseball, for what it's worth, getting back underway tomorrow, and you'll have games starting at 11 a.m. Duke and Virginia out in the Charlottesville Super Regional, but it is Super Regional time, so that'll have a number of games on the schedule throughout the weekend. For tomorrow, Duke, Virginia at 11 a.m. If you're a baseball fan, you kind of stutter this out. Like midday, it's not so. I guess midday you got the Duke Virginia game, but then that'll slide into TCU, Indiana State. You'll have South Carolina and Florida down in Gainesville. And then you'll have Oral Roberts in Oregon as well. And then obviously Saturday, Sunday, so on, it'll all really pick up. But, yeah, that's on the horizon tomorrow, starting at 11 a.m. with the Cavs and the Blue Devils. And there are a few things that are off the radar.
Thank you very much. There's one picture from last night that I want to add to it. Brittany Griner was playing in Dallas against the Wings. And the Baylor women's basketball program with Nikki Collin were there and presented her with like a plaque or a frame picture shadow box. But they were there to support Brittany Griner. And she said, a quote from her was, a lot of people have said things about Baylor, and she really complimented her time. Now, that's not what she said to Kate Fagan right after her senior year and meltdown against Louisville, but that's something that you're going to see, I don't know when, at some point, I would think in the next year or two, her on campus at a game and having her jersey retired.
Look, this was never about Brittany Griner versus the university. It was about Brittany Griner and Kim Mulkey having a personal dispute. That's what it was. Because it was never.
But, we've said things a lot about Kim. Brittany's story in ESPN, the magazine, was, I don't even know how much she wrote of it. It was almost slander.
It was. I think
it
was
also 10+ years ago.
Yeah,
too.
It was a long time ago. She was a young kid. She was very, very impressionable. I think in that. It was a long time ago. I think the initial dispute was valid. I think as things go on, it just becomes silly.
Yeah.
And that's where it had gotten, because this was never really, because again, say what you look, Baylor's going to have people say negative things about it. Some things are true, some things are not. Some things, you have to deal with, and they're going to move on. Brittany's gone through the same thing very much in her life. And this was never about her versus the university. This is just about her and Kim Mulkey having a personal conflict.
Yep, I agree. All right, so wanted to get that in. Also, this note, thank you, Craig, for Off the Radar. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark, according to a story in a Memphis newspaper, actually visited Memphis as again, the Big 12 doing their due diligence. Now, remember, Memphis has been out there twisted in the wind a handful of times, including even back in 2021. Sources say that a contingent, including Yormark, flew in. And, they're trying to redo the stadium. They're trying to work on a lot. The competition now for realignment is worse, more difficult than even it was back in 2021. But the Memphis athletic director, Laird Veach, told the Daily Memphian, I won't comment on any specific conversations, but I would share that we're very engaged, very well positioned in all the right places. There are always conversations going on in the background. That does not mean that there's an offer. That doesn't mean where they are in the pecking order, but it was interesting. And I appreciate the tweet from Memphis Belongs in the Big 12 for sending me that direct message on Memphis and the fact that, hey, at least they are still a part of a conversation, whatever that conversation might be.
I mean, that conflicts with the whole we don't want to take non-Power 5 school.
That does.
Narrative that was out there this week because that would go that bucks right up against that very notion. But, yeah, I mean, exploring and seeing information or taking in information, there's no harm in that. And, like you said, they were a candidate the last time around. They didn't even know they were a candidate, though, most of them the last time around, if you'll remember. They're like, wait, no, we're not involved. And it's like, no, I think that there's at least some interest there. And like, nope, don't think so. I was like, no, I think that there is some interest there.
You guys might want to check your email inbox.
I think they're exploring. They really are. They're not joking. And, it was just kind of weird how.
And they were going through, remember, a presidential switch or change or whatever.
Right. But, so that was, a different time. And perhaps they're more ready to welcome, the Big 12 and to see what's what. But, that's positive news for them. Doesn't mean anything in the long run necessarily, of course. But, it's better than no interest at all, sure.
Well, so thanks again to Memphis. Belongs in the Big 12 Twitter feed. He also mentioned this, and then we come back with Brian Murphy. I can tell you that FedEx, AutoZone, International Paper, Those are some monstrous companies, are all represented on our regions, some of whom apparently met with the Big 12 commissioner in Brett Yormark.